Hey there, cherry tarts. Thank you so much for joining me for this video. This is going to be a long one, so settle in. I have a lot to say and I've been wanting to broach this subject on my channel for a really long time now, so I'm very excited to finally sit down and, give it to you all straight, This is a topic that is very close to my heart. There probably will be a few more jump cuts than usual, darlings. You're going to have to bear with me because the notes for this video are absolutely mammoth. They span 4 pages and I want to make sure that I get everything in that I want to say. This video is sponsored by Skillshare. I want to thank Skillshare for sponsoring this video, and I will tell you more about how to get your free 1-month trial and the benefits of Skillshare a little bit later in this video. So, this video is going to be about my personal relationship with the theory and principles of chaos magic. It's going to be about how I've grown in terms of looking at those principles and using that theory in my magic, whether or not I am still a chaos witch, all that stuff. As usual, there will be chapters, so you can skip around if you want to. I'm not going to be sitting here and explaining the basics of the theory of chaos magic in this video. I am going to go through some of the principles of chaos magic and how they've helped me and how they've had an effect on my life, etc. But I'm not going to sit here and actually sort of like lay out for you what chaos magic is. I've already done that on my channel. This is going to be more of a deep dive into my personal relationship with it and how that's gone on. So if you're coming from a completely virgin perspective, you have no idea what chaos magic is, I would recommend some rudimentary Googling and then coming back to this video. You can, of course, watch my original video on the 6 principles of chaos magic, which I made 9 years ago now here on the channel. And I think that was the very first time that I spoke about chaos magic and its influence on me online. Of course, it was nearly a decade ago now, so it does look like it was filmed on a potato, but the information is still good. So if you want to watch that, as I said, I'll leave it down below for you. For a long time, it was the top video when you searched chaos magic on YouTube, and it therefore has racked up quite a lot of views. It's not the top video anymore. There are lots of other people that have put out really good resources and broken down like the meaning and the theory behind chaos magic. But for a long time, it was just me and Grant Morrison right at the top. So that was quite the privilege for quite some time. I do have quite the crush on Grant. So that was cool. But it also wasn't cool, which I will go into. I'll go into why I did not like being some kind of YouTube poster girl for chaos magic and why it was not my thing and why I decided to back slowly away from that whole shit show. So I'm definitely going to go into that a little bit. But I think the 6 principles as laid out by Phil Hine in Condensed Chaos, I think, those 6 principles still really lay a very strong foundation for what the theory of chaos magic is about, like what the mindset is. So definitely learning about those 6 principles is good. And I think it really helps to give you a strong start in understanding the difference between eclectic witchcraft and chaos witchcraft, because I think those 2 things are still very often conflated, and that's quite a mistake. Chaos magic is its own mindset. And its own sort of like approach to magic, if you will. It's a magical approach, which can differ wildly from anything that an eclectic witch is doing. You can be a very, very eclectic witch and still not be a chaote. So I think it's important not to conflate those 2 things. I have noticed, to be honest with you, that some people who shit on the 6 principles of chaos magic, when you look at their content, really their content is just a rehashing of the 6 principles of chaos magic. So I do find that funny. But I think those principles are solid. And they help to give you a strong foundation for understanding the theory. And I'm going to go more into like my personal experience with journeying with that theory and using it in my practice. Let's address the video from 9 years ago, which kind of started my journey into online discourse about chaos magic and brought a lot of people to me that were interested in that theory or had been working with those principles. Like I said, that video got a lot of attention for quite early on in the journey of my channel. It was an overwhelming amount of attention, actually. It started reasonably. It got like 6K views, which was a lot for me, but I was like, okay, I can handle that. And then it got, 20K views and then 40 and then 60 and then onward from there. And it kind of became, for my channel, not something that was normative. I have never been one to have my videos do as well as that. I was not keen on the attention that video got and the vibe that was built up around that video. The comments section started to become way out of hand. And I started to get this realization that talking about chaos magic online could definitely have its hazards. That video just exposed me to so many various different personality types that were quite dissimilar to my usual subscribership. And some of the comments were spiteful, they were misogynistic, they were simplifying what I was saying, they were criticising my delivery of what I was saying, comments about my looks, just stuff like that. A lot of dick measuring, a lot of gatekeeping, that kind of vibe was going on in the comments. It really was different to my usual comment section, which is usually a place where people tend to play nice and just share experiences, and it's usually kind of quite calm and, you know, for discussions about like metaphysical shit, pretty intellectual, pretty down to earth as well. This video was different in many ways. It attracted a lot of different energies that I wasn't keen on. And I did make a small handful of other chaos magic related videos after that. But what my response to that video and what the comments section in that video made me realise was that I probably was going to get a lot more from threading the ideas of chaos magic through my content without really referring to chaos magic itself, because it attracts quite a bit of different energy that I'm not into and that I don't feel like I should make myself be into. If I'm not into that shit, why should I abide it? Why should I have to tolerate it? So I started to realise that, like, you know what, I can be a KO and I can do my thing, but I don't necessarily want to put that forward as one of the main topics for my channel, because if this is the kind of stuff that's going to come my way, if this is the kind of vibe that it's going to generate and it's going to conflict with my subscribers who actually do want to have just like ordinary, calm, down-to-earth conversations, I would really rather not attract that kind of energy. And I think I'm quite serious over the course of time about the type of energy that I want to invite into my online aura and the type of energy that I'm definitely not about. So I realized from putting that video online that like a lot of people will come to discuss it that I don't necessarily want to have in my aura and around my subscribers, you know. So I want to talk a little bit about that. I deleted a lot of stuff from that comment section. You know, there were sexual advances, sexual threats, like I said, the dick measuring, the gatekeeping, the malicious low vibe energy, also some quite unhinged comments that really just didn't mean much but seemed kind of sinister. So I did do a lot of deleting. I did leave the comments section open because I still wanted people to be able to share their experiences and have exchanges about really interesting things, you know, and also to tell me how the video helped them. So I still have kept the comments section open, but some of the comments that I remember deleting along the way after this video was published were comments that were coming in and like slating some people who were just describing their experiences or talking about magic, and it was going in under their comments and like having a go at them, which I'm really not about. I do try to make sure that people play nice, and that if they don't play nice, they are blocked. I don't mind if people want to critique me, but when people start coming in under genuine comments about magical experience and being like, you know, just being malicious or saying, I don't think you did experience that, or I think it was all in your head, or I think you'll find that if you really read such and such a grimoire, this is what's supposed to happen. It's like, I really tried to curb that. So it was a lot more work for me than I was expecting, to be honest, as well. And this is definitely not counting the stuff that came to me via inbox and via private message, because as far as I remember, private messages were still a thing on YouTube at that time. I was kind of inundated with weird shit. And you know, I like me some weird shit, but I'm not talking about good weird shit. I'm talking about trolly weird shit, controlling weird shit, shit that was supposed to make me feel small about even daring to discuss chaos magic in the online sphere. And I realised that, you know, the vibe around chaos magic can sometimes be kind of not the vibe I'm after, right? So that was illuminating in a not great way. But like I said, I did go on to recognise that, you know, the principles of chaos magic are principles that I highly favour. You can see from my first book, Rebel Witch, that I'm deeply influenced by chaos magic. If you know anything about chaos magic, that's going to be plain as day to you. You can see it from space. And a lot of the stuff that I put out is, again, influenced by chaos magic, but like without actually talking about the term because I just think it's more trouble than it's worth a lot of the time. Being for a very short time, like I said, YouTube's chaos magic poster girl did not pass the fucking vibe check. I don't know who the poster girls and who the poster people are for chaos magic now. I don't read that much on the subject. I'm not actively, you know, involved. I don't know what's new. I don't know what books are coming out. I don't know who's talking about what, and that's fine by me. I prefer to just remain in my comfortable solitary lane, and I found that was the best way for me. I think one of the reasons that the video attracted the dick measuring, the gatekeeping, you know, the malice, the misogyny, etc. at that time, almost a decade ago now, is because at that time when I put that video out, there really wasn't much new discussion happening on chaos magic that I could see. I started researching it, I dug into it, and I couldn't really see that much new stuff happening or discussions taking place. It was kind of a dead disco in terms of online discourse. And so when that video came out, I feel like it was an opportunity for people to kind of like pile on and come in and, yes, talk about their own experiences at, you know, at a place where we'd only just started a discussion, and people who might have been privately using the chaos magic principles could get together and talk about it. But I think also it was an invite for people that saw this kind of like new playground where they could come in and try and like shit all over everything. In other words, I think the video became a magnet for a lot of discourse that kind of had nowhere else to go at that time, you know, and because I had my ordinary subscribership commenting on it, it seemed like the place for other people to come in and maybe like upset the vibe. So why did this happen? Why did this happen? I talk about a lot of different shit on my channel. I talk about self-development stuff. I talk about my personal journey. I talk about magic and witchcraft and tarot and all kinds of things. Why was it that this particular video had these sort of negative energies attached to it, and somewhat negative comments that I had to go through and like delete and, you know, pass out basically? Let me refer to my notes, because I feel like my notes really do a good job of explaining this, right? So I've put here, chaos magic is probably a natural choice for edgelords and egomaniacs because of its emphasis on building your own thing without the constraints of dogma and being able to change your beliefs at any time with no commitment to whatever you were committed to before. Now, to me, that all sounds glorious, right? The notion of paradigm shifting and paradigm bending, being a paradigm princess, being a paradigm pirate, jumping from one thing to the other dependent upon your needs for the working that you're doing, and not feeling like you have to have any steadfast, long-term, dedicated commitment to the one thing, and you have to choose that thing, you know, to the detriment of any other paradigm you would use. That sounds great to me, and I think it does attract people like me, but I think it also attracts people who have this mentality of like, fuck the sheeple, I am my own god, you know, that kind of vibe. And that can lead into this other territory where people feel, you know, very possessive over the theory, very possessive over the principles, very possessive over the discourse. And they don't necessarily want some little woman with red lipstick coming in and talking about it, which was a critique that I received from several different chaote men in the comments to that video. For some reason, the fact that I was wearing red lipstick and I'm a young woman was significant in some way, and definitely took out my viability as a teacher of the SIX principles. So that was really interesting. I think whenever we start looking at a theory like chaos magic theory, where we are focusing on the fact that we don't have to do what others do, and we don't have to follow a set system, and we don't have to rely on what's been laid out for us in the canon, we can do our own thing. Whenever we start looking at something like that, we can get into this mentality of you know, wanting to create exclusion and wanting to be like the big swinging dick and the big I am of the whole thing. I think chaos magic places a lot of focus on your internal power, your own personal story, and how you feel like things need to go at any particular time. And I think that sometimes people want to come in and they want to take ownership of that and strip other people from being able to have that in some way, if that makes sense. Chaos magic is about valuing and prizing your own experiences above and beyond anything that is already in the magical canon, anything that's been pre-written, anything that is supposedly the last word in what magic should be. So it's really about snubbing societies, orders, figures of authority, pre-assigned systems. You know, it's about snubbing like set menu magical practices, set menu magical techniques. It's snubbing rules, essentially, which again attracts a lot of people like me, but also I think it makes it a natural choice for people who model themselves on the Joker in The Dark Knight. So there's like this awkward Venn diagram where we begin to overlap with each other, you know. Magic is chaos magic rather is fucking edge. People who want to feel that they are all the edge all the time will definitely be as attracted to chaos magic as the artists and the freewheelers and the pioneers and the mavericks and the weirdos and everything else. You'll also get these people who are like actually taking chaos magic and kind of inverting the whole meaning and the whole point of it to fit their sense of themselves as being the Joker in the Dark Knight. I don't know. You know what I mean? You know what I'm trying to say? Write down below if you know what I'm trying to say. Chaos magic is very irreverent. That's one thing that I love about it. It really promotes this notion that anyone can access the stuff that previously, before the creation of chaos magic, would have been only assigned to people who had a very dedicated long-term practice and had maybe gone through various like certifications or various levels to be able to attain that focus or that ability. For example, if you look at the way in chaos magic that they talk about gnosis, right? The Gnostic state, and no, it's got nothing to do with the Gnostic area of Christianity. The Gnostic state in chaos magic is the state of singular focus to the detriment of any other point of focus. So it's where you allow yourself to get into a state where you can be so supremely focused on one thing as to really give it all of your energy and attention. And so it's a very sort of like, it's a very altered state in a way. The notion that being able to do that would have to take years and like loads of heavy meditation and loads of dedication to visualization practices, that's kind of blown out of the water in a way with chaos magic, because there's a lot of discussion in chaos magic about how you can take the elevator, how there are ways to fast track your experience of gnosis. And that's why in chaos magic we have so much discussion about the use of sexual arousal to arrive at gnosis. The reason for this discussion of sexual arousal is that it quickly and easily and pleasurably puts you into the altered state whereby gnosis can be accessed. And you don't have to do all these really dedicated, really drawn out things and read loads of books and stuff. It's about getting to the good stuff quickly. It's about taking the occult elevator, essentially. Something about that really excited me. The notion of that irreverence and that playfulness and that sense that anyone could arrive at something, and it's actually okay to find a quick and dirty way of doing it, and actually explore and tap into different ways of doing it that are short term but that are really good for your needs and that will get you where you need to go without feeling like you had to put all of this dedicated tireless practice in. I really liked that. I thought that was kind of an everyman kind of magic, you know, like everybody can come and everybody can do it. Everybody can come. You don't have to use sexual arousal, but it's a big like stereotype in chaos magic, right? That we're all sitting around wanking to get our magic to work. I think some people take that celebration of irreverence and that celebration of sovereignty and they change it into a celebration of disrespect and superiority, which I think is a shame, you know. And I think it's interesting too, because a lot of people have this notion, and I've spoken about this on the channel previously, a lot of people have this notion that chaos magic is about not actually, not having a dedicated practice of anything and just being chaotic in your approach. But actually a lot of chaotes choose to invest a lot of time into a specific belief structure or a specific technique. But the point is that they choose it. It's not because they think it's true and it's the last word in something and it's what you should do. It's a choice to adopt that belief, to see if it works and to arrive at your result. And then you can let it go. You can move on from it. There isn't like this ongoing dedication or this feeling that you are then obligated to continue with that. So there is a misconception that chaotes are not disciplined. And actually, this is not the case at all. Many chaotes are very disciplined and they do take on a paradigm for a long time and become extremely adept at that paradigm, but then drop that paradigm irreverently. Okay, it's very irreverent. And I think irreverence in magic and in the occult sometimes overlaps with this sense of, there's just certain, the vibe that I was getting from the comments under this video were that I'm not allowed to have what these other people have. I've misunderstood it completely, when I hadn't misunderstood it at all. I was literally just explaining 6 principles that kind of really tap you into what chaos magic theory is on a baseline level, right? So you can start to understand it. But there was this sense that, you know, you can be so chaote that the notion of discussion of what it means or discussion of what it is or discussion of how you use it would be immediately critiqued, whatever. And I don't think the fact that I was a little woman with red lipstick helped, okay? There was a misogynistic vibe, which I really didn't appreciate. Chaos magic is quintessentially results-based magic, you know? In other words, receiving the result is far more important than the sanctity of any technique you use to get there. The result is what is important, you know? the how is important as opposed to the why. The result is more important than anything that you would put into place to get there. And it's really like a means to an end, and the end is the result. And I think that for some people, like myself, that is attractive because I like to think that the best magic is low magic. In other words, you know, the best magic is magic where you arrive at at a result and you can quantify that result and it helps you with your life. It should be a practical thing, or it's good when it's a practical thing. For some people, though, I think the notion of results-based magic is just an excuse to trample over everything to get what you want. It attracts a lot of people who wouldn't necessarily think of ethics, for example, in the journey of magic. And in fact, I have been criticised before for placing emphasis on ethics as a chaote, because apparently that's not supposed to be the case. You're not supposed to be ethical as a chaote. You're supposed to be the Joker in the dark fucking night. So there's definitely that sense that, okay, if we're going to drop any sanctity of technique, if we're going to drop any sense that anything is true or anything is better, then we also can drop our ethics, our guidelines, our sense of decency, our morality. Am I making sense? You know, the overlap between people who just want to explore the playground of the occult without necessary long-term commitment to something, that overlaps with the playground of people who are like, yeah, I will trample over people with magic. I will try to enchant people to have sex with me. I will, or whatever it is, you know, just stuff that for me is ethically a massive grey area. Like it's not even a grey area. It's just not okay by me, you know? So yeah, I think receiving something by indecent means would be like wanting to do that would be a reason someone would get into chaos magic. And so I realised that my world, my beautiful, intricate, excited, playful world of chaos magic was overlapping with people for whom chaos magic is a way to abandon any necessary magical ethics. And those people are not going to vibe with me. We're not going to understand each other. In my notes, I've written, you know, in chaos magic, you should and can use anything that will help you achieve the aim, regardless of whether or not it's ever been in your paradigm before, and regardless of whether or not you will keep it in your paradigm as you go forward. This can attract people who have a kind of snatch and grab mentality about magic and about life, the kind of mentality where everything is basically for the taking and nothing is really off limits. You know, there is no ethical structure to go by. It makes sense to me, therefore, that chaos magic would attract people who also like things like fascism, or who think that colonialism is okay, or that it's fine to demean my content just because I'm a woman. You know, like it makes sense that that overlap was happening. But at the time, I was very shocked by it. And it was quite upsetting to me. Now it makes a lot more sense. I can understand why chaos magic would attract fascists and edgelords. It does make sense. It makes sense now, damn it, with the benefit of hindsight, with 9 years of hindsight. But at the time I was like, what is going on? This is the coolest part of magic. Why am I coming up against this resistance and this nastiness and having to make sure that my subscribers are not attacked for having a decent conversation about something without all of this crap and all of this edge coming in? But now it does make sense. If we are talking about results-based magic, and we're talking about like quick and dirty, get in there, get what you want. There's no such thing as high magic and low magic. Like you have what you want in life and you achieve that aim by any means necessary. Yeah, there is going to be a sense there of a snatch and grab personality type who thinks that their way is the right way and that they should have what they want, even if it tramples over another person's principles or free will or safety. And so, yeah, it makes sense to me now that I started to experience that kind of energy coming in. And I don't know how many of you watching this have ever had an experience online or offline whereby you're discussing something with someone and you hold it in high regard and it's influenced you, but you start to realize that some of the other people that it's influenced, you hold it in high regard, are really diametrically philosophically opposed to you. And you're like, whoa, I didn't expect this. This is not how I've interpreted this thing. This is not what it means to me. Why am I being criticized for what it means to me? And why does it mean that to you? That's like really far out. Why is that a thing? You know, I experienced that myself, both through reading some of these comments, a lot of which have now been deleted because I was like, you know what, I just don't want to deal with this fuck shit. A lot of those things have been deleted, but also I experienced it when reading things later on Reddit and stuff and on forums from chaotes. I would read some of the stuff they would say and I would be like, vibe check. vibe check is melting down, all right? The vibe check is lava at this point. There is nowhere to stand. This vibe is fucked. Ridiculous. Darlings, this video is sponsored by Skillshare, and as many of you already know, I seriously rate this incredible platform for learning and exploration and self-development. They offer a ton of different courses that feed the creative brain and will help to widen your skill set. And they offer all kinds of courses on things from animation and graphic design, right through to wellness, entrepreneurship, and so much more. I wanted to highlight a couple of courses today. First of all, I really enjoy Emma Gannon's course, Unlocking Your Potential, 5 exercises to build creative confidence. Emma is an author, broadcaster, and podcast host. And during the course, I like that she talks about self-sabotage, perfectionism, procrastination, all things that I really like to get a grip on, and I like to have tools in my kit to help me to deal with. But what I really enjoy about this course is the little bit at the end, that magical 5 minutes about embracing self-promotion. I talk with a lot of clients of mine about the problems around this, and so it was really interesting for me to get Emma's perspective. I also wanted to talk about Stephanie Neam's course, Silence and Curiosity, a guide to self-reflection and self-discovery. This is a beautiful course which is all about using silence for self-reflection and curiosity for self-discovery. And aside from anything else, I know this is a really shallow reason, but Stephanie's accent is just beautiful. She's from Lebanon, and I really just enjoyed hearing her speak. It was very relaxing. If you want to be the first 1,000 or one of the first 1,000 cherry pies in this audience to use the link down below in the description, you will get a free 1-month trial of Skillshare. Take a look. You'll see how much is available. If you know that you're watching things on YouTube that a lot of the time just aren't really teaching or nurturing you that much, what's the harm in exploring Skillshare absolutely for free? As I said, you'll find the link in the video description below, and of course every click helps me out too, so thank you. Obviously any magical practitioner can change up their techniques and can change up their belief system as a matter of course, you know, and evolutionarily through your practice you're going to change your mind, you're going to have experiences that are going to shift how you want to do things or whatever. That's normal, you know, but chaos magic goes further. Chaos magic actually holds the position that you don't need to hold a position at all, you know, that in a sense, both nothing and everything is sacred, you know, nothing is true, everything is permitted, that kind of vibe. And I think that principle itself will attract both the best and brightest practitioners, but also it will attract the people who just want to shit on everything and for whom like nothing is sacred in magic or pretty much anywhere else. And they're just out to troll and make trouble. And this is not a judgment, this is a discernment, okay? I don't know a lot of these people. I don't know what's going on in their life. I don't know what led them to idealize the Joker in the Dark Knight, which is kind of how I see this energy that came into my channel, that came into this comment section. I don't know those fucking people, okay? And they're not the people I would choose to go for a drink with. But what I'm doing in this video is I'm outlining, the reasons why I feel like this happened. Like, why are there some of these perspectives and personality types and attitudes when it comes to chaos magic? What is it about chaos magic specifically that attracts this shit? And I know there'll probably be at least one person in the comments section who'll be like, well, you know, there's edgelords and egomaniacs and gatekeepers in every area of the occult, Kellyanne, in every area, right? You've got Nazis in the Norse pagan world. You've got people in various areas of Wicca that are like, this is the right way, no, this is the right way, and gatekeeping and dick measuring and all that stuff. And I know that it's an issue like across occult practices. I get that. But I think what I'm trying to say is that naively 9 years ago, I thought to myself, like, I didn't even think to myself consciously, but I think on an unconscious level, I was like, well, chaos magic would be the least likely area for that shit to go down. And actually it's not, because of its emphasis on irreverence, because of its emphasis on, you know, results-based, get what you want, do it in a way that doesn't necessarily conform to what has been laid down as the magical orthodoxy. Because of those kinds of discussions, because of the emphasis on personal experience and the attainment of personal desires in a very overt way, because of its emphasis on breaking down magical systems and societies and secrecy and hierarchy and stuff like that, because of all those things, yes, it attracts people that I can really relate to, but it also attracts people for whom I would, you know, not have much time to conversate, and they were trying to conversate with me in my comment section, and I was just like, this is not going to fly. This is a very different video to what I usually do. This is I hope this doesn't come across as really bitchy and really sassy. It's just genuinely my take on what happened in that instance. I want to talk a little bit now about the positive side of my experience with chaos magic, because it has mostly been incredibly positive, right? It's really, really helped me. It's had a huge influence on me, a huge influence on my content, a huge influence on my private practice of witchcraft. Obviously, chaos magic does attract really creative, experimental people having fantastic discussions about like things like the overlap between art and spirituality, and the breakdown of the difference between the magical and the mundane, the mixing of those two things, the notion that there is no hard line between those two things, and all of that really attracted me. You know, I think that the idea that you would be turned off by a priestess telling you what to do, or an author being your authority, it makes a lot of sense to me. Like, I want to be my magical authority, and I don't want to feel like something I'm doing is wrong, or that I have to stick with something because I did it before. I'm experimental in my magic. I use art, I use pop culture references, I use stuff from my childhood. I believe in my innate power. So, and I believe that I'm the world builder. So in a lot of ways, chaos magic spoke to me. I think the first thing about chaos magic that was so fucking positive for me, to be honest, was finding something that described how I felt and what I wanted to do. And that is a massive permission slip, as many of you will know. If you've ever been researching, going down rabbit holes, you know, maybe not even looking for something, maybe you're not even consciously thinking to yourself, there's this way that I view magic, there's this way that I view spirituality, and I can't find a name for it. You might not even be thinking that. You might not just have hit anything yet that really clicks with you. And suddenly you come across something in your late night internet scurrying and you're like, holy shit. You know, it happens to me quite regularly. I find terms for things that I didn't know there were terms for. I've mentioned those terms on my channel, and other people have been like, I didn't know there was such a thing as that. That's what I have. That's what I've been dealing with. That feeling of illumination and access, therefore, to community and discourse and resources. Oh my goddess. So good. That was really the first thing that it gave to me. You know, discovering chaos magic was like a million light bulbs going off. I remember the relief I felt at the exact point of reading the term chaos magic, because it was a righteous moment in my reality. And I was just like, this is where it's at. This is the excitement that I could never have gotten from reading 20 Wicca books when I was in my teens. This is the shit right here, you know? And I was like in my early 20s then. And everything really started cooking on gas for me from that point on. And that was a beautiful experience. I also think that everything that I absorbed from chaos magic about experimentation over dogma really spoke to me and was really important for me at a time in my life where I could have started taking magic in a very serious direction and following a list of rules that had already been outlined and a pre-existing system. I think I was looking for something like that. I was looking for something to really sink my teeth into. And the notion that you don't have to be hung up on what the truth is, but rather that you have the ability to believe that something is true for a time because it serves your purposes, really spoke to me. It spoke to my artistic, irreverent playfulness. I think once you've severed from the idea that there is a truth waiting to be understood, you can actually creatively select a belief that will aid your aims, you know? You can drop things and pick things up. You don't have to be serious and dedicated indefinitely to something. You can aim for plasticity of thought and experience rather than seeing magical flexibility as failure. And I think before I discovered chaos magic, I was definitely seeing my desire for flexibility and my instinct towards flexibility as failure. I was seeing it as a lack of discipline. I was seeing it as a scattiness in my personality that was creating these different pathways I was interested in going down and pulling me away from the one way of doing things, which I should be sticking to, which I should be adamant about. And when I discovered chaos magic and I started reading about it, I was like, oh shit, I don't have to be like that. I don't have to see things that way. And I can still be a really banging witchy practitioner. So that was very helpful. I think chaos magic really drew me more to the idea of bringing in whatever you like. You know, like I said earlier, if you know anything about chaos magic, you can see from space that I am influenced by it. There's no question. I would never have to say it. Someone who's read anything about chaos magic would look at my book or look at my content and be like, this girl's definitely been, you know, sipping from the keg of chaos magic. She has read about it, you know. because you can see it's clearly influenced me. And a lot of my content and a lot of my beliefs around magic involve the notion of having the freedom to bring in anything you like, you know. One thing that was really useful for me when I discovered chaos magic was that was the first time, I think, for me, that I consciously recognized that there is a Venn diagram between creativity and spirituality, and I get to exist in the middle. I don't have to carve out time to do my collages and time to do my ritual. I can bring my collage stuff into sacred space and I can do it in a ritual context, and that's fine. So it gave me a lot of freedom, and it saved me a lot of fucking time, guys, you know? The notion that I could be an artist and a witch at the same time saved me time. It saved me having to make that decision between art and magic. Why can't they be the same, you know? I can live in the middle. So it allowed me to consider anything as magical. And therefore I started mining my psyche for what I considered to be magical. Things like dolls and dolls' houses, and things I liked as a child, and cartoon characters, and long ago forgotten literary works, and kids' books, and vintage photos I brought back from my travels in Russia, and hip-hop lyrics, you know, and particular sexual positions, classic phrases, old adverts and their slogans and branding, and, you know, just like all kinds of things. The way that I work with abstract expressionism now for my scrying and for my ritual, like, all of that stuff has its roots in chaos magic. The idea of like, go further, try something else, you know. You don't have to let your faith in a paradigm, or your sort of sense that you need to honor and uphold a paradigm, stop you from hopping on another fucking pirate ship and going there and seeing what's over there. You know, that really helped me, and it made magic much more interesting. I'm not going to say that I wouldn't still be a witch now if I hadn't discovered chaos magic, but I don't know what kind of a witch I would be, and I don't know if I'd still be making content, and I definitely wouldn't have written Rebel Witch. And I don't think I'd be working on another book. It gave me the fire, the fuel, the ignition that I really wanted, and so I definitely would say that about it. And the other thing about chaos magic that I think is so freeing and that I really enjoy is that it teaches you that you don't have to see witchcraft as difficult by default. You know, when I was growing up in the 90s, I was born in 1984, guys, for transparency. When I was growing up in the 90s, I was reading a lot of very serious books. And I've said on the channel before that when I started getting into chaos magic, and I ordered Condensed Chaos and Prime Chaos and stuff, and I started reading on the forums about it and whatnot, that was the first time that play really entered magic for me. And that's not just because a lot of the books were serious and dry and droll, which they were in the 90s, like the ones I was reading anyway, because I wanted to be serious, you know. I definitely bypassed Silver Ravenwolf because I didn't find it serious. It didn't look serious to me. I know a lot of people say there's actually a lot of great resources in that area and really help them and everything, but I was quite high-minded and I think snobby and pretentious as a teenager. I wanted to appear serious and I wanted to feel serious. So I was going for these heavy, heady, big tomes, right? And I think that it hadn't occurred to me yet that I could bring my very playful, colourful sense of self into magic until chaos magic. Until I read Condensed Chaos, and he was talking about making a servitor that's like a cool cat with sunglasses on a skateboard to help you get through traffic. And I was like, something clicked in my head. I don't even know how conscious it was, but something clicked with me on some level that was like, oh, I can be who I am all the rest of the time. I don't have to go to the altar or go into the astral or whatever and become this different version of me where I leave everything about myself at the door. And if you look at the outfit I'm wearing today, I think this is rather a good description of my personality in a sense, right? Like, just to make it short and sweet. This is me. So why should that not also be me in sacred space, I guess, you know? So I think it gave me the belief that witchcraft didn't have to be something that I had to mold myself to achieve. Witchcraft didn't have to be something that you have to take many, many, many years to accomplish. You can shoot for ease and quick results and minimum input with maximum output if you want to. That is something that chaos magic gives you the permission to do if that's what you want. This was not the attitude that I've been exposed to beforehand, where I felt patronized by a lot of the resources I was reading. the prevalent attitude was more like, it's hard, but you'll learn over many, many years, little one, you know? Whereas I veered more towards this idea that I actually had always been magical and I had always had power. And I sort of like always knew the deep magic from the dawn of fucking time. And chaos magic gave me more that feeling that I already unconsciously was feeling deprived of, but chaos magic made me see just how much I was being deprived of it, you know? It's a very permission-giving theory, and it helped me to get unstuck. I think chaos magic theory is inherently unpatronising, and that's why I find it so funny that when I was dealing with that negative energy I was speaking of earlier, it did have a very patronising tone, and I'm happy with myself that I had such a strong sense of what chaos magic meant to me that I didn't let that kind of attitude sully my experience of it. Am I still a chaos witch? I mostly am. I pretty much mostly am, you know. I have some set unchanging beliefs now that I've had for a long time, like certain beings that I work with, certain ways of doing things that I find are really useful to me. I choose not to part with those beliefs. I've chosen to remain in this specific paradigm that I'm in now for a long time. I do believe I could part with that paradigm though, and I think that's what makes me a chaos witch. The fact that I could part with that paradigm if it was convenient for me, if it's what I needed to do, if I felt the instinct, the itchy feet, you know, and I wanted to go in a different direction, I could. But I think for me, the whole thing for me is if it ain't broke, don't fix it, you know? So yes, there are some long-term unchanging things about the way that I approach magic and divination and deity work and my attitude towards tarot and whatnot. But I do believe I could fuck with those things. I just choose not to. So that's what I would say there. I remember reading somewhere a long time ago that a chaos magic practitioner does not necessarily need to be speeding through endless different paradigms like Kleenex, you know? That's not the mark of the chaos practitioner. They can do that if they want to, but a chaos practitioner can also be a Satanist for absolutely years and then switch paradigms. And that kind of helped me to see that I haven't retired my commitment to chaos magic principles. And maybe that's what I'm doing now with kind of like the mainstays of my practice, like the double-headed goddess work that I do, right? I work with two main goddesses. I have specific systems around that. I work with archetype theory. I work with chosen sacred texts quite a lot. I heavily have a Jungian perspective and a psycho-spiritual perspective in my tarot. I don't really veer towards the other more predictive, more soothsaying side of it. These are all mainstays with me. I haven't really switched that paradigm in any of those ways, but all these things are consistent in my practice, but are subject to change if they cease to be helpful. You know, it just happens to be the case that those things that I've kept close to me and that I've kept carrying out are helpful for now, and so they stay. I stick with those things. I think that for a lot of people, the idea of doing something like, for example, changing your deities because there's other deities over there that are going to help you more with what you need to do, or they suit you more for that time in life. The idea of doing that would be, for a lot of people, like changing sports teams because your sports team isn't doing very well. Like, it's sacrilege, in other words. You don't do it, okay? You know, you stay the course with your sports team. You don't just duck and dive and weave and change over to another one. You don't just switch allegiances because things are getting difficult. But for a chaote, you do change depending on need, and this isn't seen as a bad thing. In fact, the idea of not being morally allowed to change your sports team would be considered in chaos magic to be a form of conditioning that you can break down and you probably should look at, because why not? Because why the fuck not? Who's writing the rules here? Who's in charge here? Is it you? Are you a man or an amoeba? You know? So in chaos magic, there is that, like I said, irreverent sense of like, if something isn't working, tear it down. And I think other types of practitioner would be like, we don't tear it down, we renovate, we respect the original architecture, we keep the internal structure because it was invented in whenever. And a chaote will just be like, tear it down, I want a fucking bouncy castle there by tomorrow. You know, so there is that sense of deep permission, to the point that someone who doesn't vibe with the chaos magic paradigm would find, I think, quite obnoxious. But to me, I always found it to be really fun and really like yeah, why the fuck not, basically. For me personally, I find that I can never consider something in witchcraft or in the occult without tying it to my attitudes of things more widely, and without tying it to like my politics and putting it under a microscope and looking at how it plays out culturally. I can't separate the two things, or I choose not to separate the two things. I always go in that direction. And this has led me to think a lot about the overlap in some ways between the attitudes in chaos magic, which I very much embrace, and also the attitudes that lead to things like white privilege, or not examining your white privilege, because like you're born with white privilege, but not examining those things or being comfortable with those things, whatever. You know, because if you look at the example I gave before, like follow any sports team, take anything that looks good. You don't have to stick with your sports team. You don't have to stick with the things you grew up with. You don't have to stick with any of that. Just decondition yourself, right? I really like that attitude. It gives me a big permission slip and I enjoy it. But it's also a colonial attitude, isn't it? This idea of everything is for the taking and just have what you want. And you don't have to have an allegiance to anything. You just go anywhere and you explore everything. And I've personally combated that by recognizing that I am naturally inclined to have some limits. You know, that's good for me. In terms of like, I have made a video on my channel before about cultural appropriation. I have made a video about the difference between snatch and grabbing cultures that are not my own, and respecting and from a distance studying cultures that are not my own, right? The difference between being interested in something religious or spiritual that's not for me and teaching from the front a religion or culture that's not mine, right? There's a difference. So I tend to find that like in the chaos magic realm, where snatch and grab and switching and not pledging allegiance and everything's on the table, where those kinds of attitudes are prevalent, I notice that in my political leanings, I don't feel that way, and I don't always consider that to be respectful. But I like limits on what I do. I think that's just part of me. And I think, you know, the idea that I could achieve, for example, what the priestess of a closed, marginalized practice has achieved over many years is a basic white take. And I don't want to be that basic bitch anyway. In my book, I actually, unfortunately, wrote very little about cultural appropriation in my book. First of all, because I did not have the word count. And second of all, because I don't really feel like I'm the best person to voice that stuff. I'm not massively well read in it. It's not really my lane, okay? But I did write a bit about cultural appropriation at the end of Rebel Witch. And in that section of the book, I said that it's actually not that creative or sovereign or rebel witch at all to just snatch and grab from things that, you know, the people practicing it themselves are telling you are not meant for you, or that you are misunderstanding, or that you are taking out of context. You know, that's not actually the rebel witch way as far as I'm concerned. It's basic, and it's what white people have done since time immemorial anyway. Like, I'd like to do something different, please. I'd like to surprise me and everyone else. I think basically what I want to do is I want to be a chaos practitioner, but I also want to know that the attitude of everything is mine to use and to teach and to master and to conquer is not actually creative. It's very often colonialist. So it's okay to put some limits in place, or at least to observe how you are interacting with something that you are studying or using. I think there's no need for my practice to be a gross continuation of white supremacy. There just isn't a need for that. And also there's no need as well for my practice to be so ethics free that I'm trampling over someone's free will by putting an enchantment on them to get them to fall in love with me. Like, you know, all these things. Basically what I'm trying to say is it's okay for me to still be me ethically, but also believe that chaos magic is very freeing and very permission giving. I need to do both things. I need to look at whereabouts you could take the principles of chaos magic and make them very problematic or very destructive or very disrespectful or very unkind. And I think some of the people that interacted with my initial video nearly a decade ago now were in that camp. I don't want to be in that camp. I'm not into that camp. I've also noticed in my deeper exploration of the chaos magic principles as they apply to me politically, I've noticed that chaos magic is quite privileged in the sense that not everybody was even raised to believe that they could have everything and they could go everywhere and everything was for them, you know? Like it's quite a testament to one's privilege if they even can get into that headspace at all. A lot of people, for example, from marginalized communities and marginalized spiritualities, may not feel that they actually can deviate from the paradigm of their marginalized spiritual practice, because they feel like they have a responsibility to keep that practice alive, you know? So their magical practice is bigger than just their individual aims. Like, it's all well and good to say you have that paradigm until it's not useful, then you go to that paradigm and you do that over there. But the thing is, I can do that because I was raised heathen as fuck. My parents did not place any spiritual beliefs onto me necessarily. They said I could do what I want. And also I'm white, so I come already from the dominant culture, if you will, or dominant, you know, race or whatever, racial phenotype. So, you know, there's a lot of privilege already in being able to take a standpoint of like, I do this and then I do that. Whereas somebody who works with, let's say, a marginalized, closed Pan-African tradition that came to them through lineage, or that came to them through reclamation of it, will feel a deep responsibility to those practices, even when things are going in a difficult way, or even when they're not feeling like they're getting completely fulfilled by those practices. But they have other reasons, collectivistic, deeply important, sometimes trauma-informed reasons why they might not deviate from those practices. They can't be a paradigm princess like me, because they have other reasons why those practices are important to keep alive and they're important to be a part of. And they might feel very conflicted about even the unconscious desire that's rising up in them, that they might want to deviate, and they might want to give themselves a permission slip to go and do something else and work with the Greek gods, or go over here and do this, and not, you know, focus on their traditional gods or their traditional practices. That might be really conflicting for them in a way that I've never experienced, you know. For them, it's about being a representative for their culture, making sure that their culture doesn't become fucking endangered, that their practices don't go extinct, you know. It's combating years and years, decades, hundreds of years of colonialism wiping out those religious and spiritual practices. So the whole notion of like, I'm a paradigm princess and I go where the wind blows and stuff is already quite a privileged position. And I try to keep that in mind as well. And I'm not saying that these things make it bad to be into chaos magic. I'm saying that I like to look at everything that I believe and everything that feeds me and everything that interests me through the lens of like, how privileged I am to even be able to consider that an option, and who does it leave out or exclude or harm if I look at these things and take these things from chaos magic without really questioning what they sound like to different ears. To my ears, it's music. To somebody else's ears, it might be like, well, that's easy for you to fucking say. You don't have all these other considerations, you know, about spirituality and about faithfulness to lineage or whatever it might be, right? So I feel like what I do with my practice and with chaos magic and with implementing those principles is I try to enjoy those principles for what they are to me, but also recognize that I only enjoy them because I'm me. And for someone else, those principles might sound dangerous. They might sound like I'm going to come in and snatch and grab from them and make money off their stuff, or, you know, like take the authority from them on stuff, or take things grossly out of context. What sounds like music to my ears might sound like horrendously colonialist and devil-may-care and thoughtless to somebody else. And they might be like, oh, you know, that really smacks of something a bit gross that's already caused a lot of trouble. You know, you want to put that shit down. So I try to think whenever something appeals to me, it's fine that it appeals to me, but I try to be conscious of how it would sound through other ears, how it would be filtered through someone with very different experiences to me, and whether or not they would find that to be dangerous or uncouth or unsafe, and whether or not I am implementing the principles in a way that does not contribute to that harm. That's really important to me. I don't feel the need to, you know, straight up refuse to learn about something that isn't my culture or isn't my religion. When it comes to religion and spirituality and magic and the history of that stuff and the contemporary usage of that stuff, I do want to understand a lot. I am fascinated. It is an area of interest for me. But I want to see the difference between understanding it from good, legitimate sources and claiming that I have become a conveniently good, legitimate source because I learned a bit about it and now it's time for me to take it and teach it and promote it. Like, I want to see the difference between those things. I want to stay in my lane as much as I can. My lane is fascinating anyway. It's full of awesome stuff, from my dreams, my astral experiences, my childhood, my work with the inner child, my art making, my love making, all that shit. my lane is filled with fantastic stuff. I don't have to snatch and grab something that I might not be showing full respect for. I don't live in an intellectual and creative desert, you know. I have enough so as not to require the plundering of someone else's private garden just because I can. I guess that's what I'm saying. But like, to learn about it, to respectfully imbibe that information, to use that information in other situations in life where it's useful. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to not learn about something, but there's a difference between learning about it, putting money into the pockets of the people who make those legitimate resources, and having some respect. There's a difference between that way of doing it and plundering it, putting it into my content, teaching it for myself as the authority. I see that happening with absolutely no credit being paid to the people who actually come from those marginalized practices and cultures and who make these resources. And that, to me, is questionable. Even as a chaote, that is questionable. Yes, some chaotes have ethics. I believe I will basically always resonate with the ideas put forth by Chaos Magic darlings. I think it's much easier as well for someone to be a chaote these days anyway, because of the way that our life is set up online. We're all so plugged in and online, and I think the notion of paradigm shifting is something that we do an amazing amount now on a mental level anyway, because of social media and the way that it's shifted our perspective and made us be able to shift perspectives with the quickness, you know. So for me, I think it's interesting because I can, in the space of an hour, I can watch a long form video essay on a topic, a really big deep dive into it. I can also, in that same hour, go over to somebody else's channel and watch a long form video essay, which gives me the entire other perspective, the other position, the position that's opposed to the original position. I can also have another tab open on my computer where I'm doing a Google deep dive into the subject, and I can have another tab on the computer open where I'm laughing at memes about the whole subject. So to me, that really is the best training for paradigm shifting that I can imagine, in a sense. If you use it right, it will give you great power when it comes to magical paradigm bending anyway. So I feel like a lot of the mindsets that chaos magic was set up to promote can now actually happen more organically. So I think it's as good a time as ever to get into chaos magic principles and apply them to your magic and to figure out whether or not they represent you, you know. So those are my thoughts on the topic, and please leave any of your own comments and ideas and thoughts down below, unless they are anything that is trying to tell me that I have no right to speak on this because I'm just a little woman with silly earrings. All right, let's leave that shit at the door. All right, no one's interested. No one's interested. You'll be blocked. Mwah, bye-bye, you know, adios. Other than that, please do come in and play nice and let's have a chat, because I've been wanting to get this shit out for a while. I don't know for how long, but I feel like this really was relieving for me. By the way, if you want to talk to me about your own witchcraft practice, you can book a witchy brainstorming session with me, my darlings. I will leave the details for those sessions down below. I help people construct and put together their spiritual and ritual and magical practices. We talk about routines. We talk about problem solving, troubleshooting, what's going wrong, how to get things moving, how to feel the permission, how to connect with your innate power. If you feel like you could use a little bit of that, I do offer those in my online store alongside a bunch of other bits and pieces, so please go over and browse. Okay, much love, my darlings. Thank you so much for joining me, and blessed be until next time. Mwah! Keep it rebellious.